Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 15th ranked team. Welcome. I'm redoing that. Hello,
You're good.
everyone. Welcome to. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next installment to our preseason power rankings series. Today we have our number 15 team, the Minnesota Vikings. This is a team I did a lot of pushing for. All right.
He did.
In the
He did.
last episode, we went over a team that Dean was a lot higher on than me. Now we're doing a team I'm higher on than him. Okay, this is the area where we're getting to a little bit of dispute. I want to say it's really only these two teams. And then after that, we kind of get back to on the same page. Uh, this was absolutely a team that I was higher on than him. We mutually agreed to put them at 15. I would have pushed for them to go a little bit further. Still, though, 15, we agreed here. But before we get into one of our more, I want to say, defining landmark rankings, how are you doing today, Dean? And how do you feel about the Minnesota Vikings?
I have no doubt that this team's set up for success in the coming future. I just think this is more of a retooling year for this Vikings team. For a team that isn't as talented as they are, I think they are in a bit of a retooling year. And I know there's so much talent on both sides of the ball, but when you have a brand new player at the most important position in the sport and someone who, the starter might just be a rookie who I love, however, might need some time to adjust to the NFL level, it's hard to predict this team to have as high of a ceiling as maybe you have for them. But I totally understand your hype for them.
Yeah, and listen, the talk about rookie quarterback and all that stuff, I completely get. And it's funny how I'm higher on the team, but you're higher on the quarterback, right? That's the really interesting
Yes.
thing here. I'm
That
not a
is
big
interesting.
JJ guy, but I look at the other things that they have going for them, right? And a big reason that I feel so good about this, we're going to get into the head coach and culture right now. Last year, so much adversity. So much. Justin Jefferson, who was one of the best players in the sport, injured, missed time. They had to deal with injuries to their quarterback, who was having an amazing year at the start. They ended up pulling Joshua Dobbs off of Arizona, right? I mean, they were doing all this stuff that makes you think, even if they were just average there, how does this season look, right? And the fact is, they were a nearly playoff team despite quarterback injuries and best player on the team by far injuries and this injury and that injury and one of the least talented defenses in football still performing pretty well. So much of this is coaching. This team, I truly do think, is one of the premier examples of how coaching can affect a team in the modern NFL and how much it can
Right.
elevate talent in the NFL. And what happens when that great coaching meets talent? Well, you have a really, really threatening team in the NFC North.
Right. Absolutely. So let's just get into, head coach and culture here, and let's talk about Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell came over from the Rams. He was kind of an unknown when he was hired. He was just somebody they were like, oh, he's a McVay guy. Let's bring him in. And it's worked out to this degree for sure. This offense and what he does on the X's and O's is up there as one of the better offensive minds in the game. But it's not only on the X's and O's where he succeeds, he's a culture guy as well. The players love him. The locker room rallies around him. I'm a really big fan of Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, and how could you not be? Once again, when you're an offensive minded head coach and you could scheme up ways for a Joshua Dobbs to go out there and seem like one of the most interesting names in football for a solid month without Justin Jefferson healthy, I mean, you deserve all the credit in the world, right? And we're going to get into the offensive scheme later, but he does a great job with the X's and O's, of course, being a McVay guy. But then on top of that, again, so much adversity last year, yet they were remarkably successful, right? Remarkably. And they drafted J.J. McCarthy, whose number one thing that teams really liked about him, winner. He's a winner. He always has been, right? And I think that says so much about how this Vikings team is built. They build it out of winners. They want guys who want to win, know how to win. You could be the backup quarterback. You better know how to win. Okay? And that's the top priority in terms of building this team and building this locker room. Okay? You don't need to be the most talented player on earth. His scheme and Flores' scheme will make up for the lack of talent.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. So let's now get into the offensive side of the ball. Wes Phillips is this team's offensive coordinator. He has some input, but this is Kevin O'Connell's offense, as it is with a lot of these offensive-minded head coaches. And he brought over that McVay West Coast style of offense that we're used to seeing the Rams run, and he runs it over here to perfection.
Yeah, I mean, I think Phillips, his influence goes a lot through the passing game. I think he really designs that more than anything. But of course, O'Connell will have an impact on this. A lot of choice routes, loaded with choice routes, like any McVay offense is, right? They want smart football players because, you could have a player that could run a slant really well. If the defense is prepared for a slant, they're prepared for a slant. If you have a wide receiver that knows how to read the leverage of the corner, you're playing really tight inside leverage. Okay, I'm gonna make it look like a slant, and then I'm gonna cut outside because I'm a smart player. I know how to adapt, and they have smart quarterbacks that also know how to make that adaptation. And boom, easy play. And you see that constantly throughout games with this Vikings team. It is a very well put together offense with a lot of smart football players.
And one thing I don't think Kevin O'Connell gets enough credit for. I think he's one of the best coaches in the league when it comes to situational play action passes. I mean, just his offense is built on the play action pass, and he is phenomenal with his play calling on that side of the ball.
Of course, yeah. And part of that is the design, but I like that you said that because they like to threaten you with that run game. Okay? Yes. They will threaten you with that run game. They are a run first offense, pass second. Even though they have Justin Jefferson, they are a run-first team. They want to establish that ground game. They go under center. They hand the ball off, run between the tackles, and then when you're overplaying the run, that's when you see a Kirk Cousins or a J.J. McCarthy really make that fake handoff, sleight of hand, rifle it down the field. That's when Jefferson is really doing his most damage.
Right. So now let's get into this offensive roster, and now we get to start with I've always said there's only one actual quarterback battle in the league, and that was O'Connell and Minshew. But this is a quarterback battle. We don't know who's going to start the season for the Vikings.
We were told it would be Darnold.
But from what I've heard, J.J. McCarthy has been killing it in camp. I've heard he's been torching the defense in camp. So let's start with Sam Darnold first. Former third overall pick to the New York Jets. We all know him for seeing Ghost. Has had a kind of tumultuous career where he's shown flashes of being this great player, but can never consistently put it together, and at times was a bad quarterback. And now he gets put in one of the more desirable quarterback landing spots in the NFL, where you have the best receiver, debatably the best receiver in football. You've got a fantastic offensive line and a fantastic offensive mind. So is there a world where we see Sam Darnold revive his career?
So I don't know if he'll revive his career, but is there a world where we see Sam Darnold go out there and play some good football? Yeah. Like I said, we saw Joshua Dobbs come in and become like the offensive player of the month, right? Like, he was a really exciting name for a while. I think Sam Darnold can be a really exciting name. He has played in a Shanahanian offense in the past. Keep in mind the McVay tree is a branch. Yeah. The McVay tree is a branch of the Shanahan tree. So he's familiar with, that play-action shot, West Coast type of stuff. Listen, I don't think Sam Darnold keeps the starting job forever. I don't think he's going to reinvent his career, but I think he goes out there, plays some good football, but everyone's kind of aware he's a product of this scheme. He's a product of Justin Jefferson. He's a product of Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, all of these great guys, right? Again, I feel good about him going out there and playing well. I just don't think he's going to light the world on fire. I don't think he needs to.
Right. And then we get to talk about J.J. McCarthy. I am a J.J. McCarthy truther. I was a lot higher on consensus than I think the majority of people. Not that I was saying he should be the first overall pick or anything, but I really like what he brought to the table. I saw him as a relatively high floor player that also had a high ceiling, which you don't see extremely often. Coming from that Michigan team, all he does know how to do is win. And he's kind of I saw him as a project. He's a guy who's got all the intangibles, but needs to work on his accuracy, reads the field a little well, and wasn't asked to do a whole lot at Michigan. And that was kind of the biggest thing. The handoff king over there in Michigan was J.J. McCarthy. They handed the ball. They beat who'd they beat? Penn State handing the ball off 30 times, right? Like that was the Michigan offense, and that was a large part of why a lot of people weren't huge fans of McCarthy, is because he wasn't asked to do a lot. But to me, he was the best. Well, statistically, he was the best quarterback in the country on third down, and I think that says a lot of you getting the job done when you're asked to do it. And I think J.J. McCarthy did that a lot, and I think that's the goal of him being in this Minnesota offense. And again, about as desirable of a rookie quarterback landing spot as it's going to get. Kevin O'Connell, Justin Jefferson, a great offensive line.
Now, I'm not comparing them in the sense of evaluation of the prospect, but I do, when I look at McCarthy and, his play style, his traits, he reminds me a lot of an Andy Dalton, right? Someone that consistently fires the ball, no loft. He does not air the ball out in terms of lofting it, but he'll fire the ball, which is important in a West Coast offense, tight windows. There's not really many, loft the ball to the sideline for a back shoulder. Like, that's not how this offense is designed. My thing with J.J. McCarthy is I don't really love the decision-making. He didn't turn the ball over much in Michigan. I feel like he should have. I feel like he should have, one. And two, it didn't feel like he was willing to really read the defense like a West Coast quarterback should be.
And I can agree with that.
Yeah, he's a little bit
he was
gunslinger, I almost want to say.
And he did have a gunslinger in his in his build. You saw a lot of, again, you talk about throws or a lot of turnovers. He did a lot of tight window throws over the middle of the field in McCarthy's film. He loved doing that. And I think that's also why he's been enticing to this team, because West Coast offenses do love targeting the middle of the field. So it's really a matter of, can they coach him to read the field like a West Coast quarterback? I think they can. I trust Kevin O'Connell a lot. So
yeah. And I think
that's right.
When I saw J.J. McCarthy as a prospect, my evaluation wasn't overly positive. When I saw him compared to the other quarterbacks in context of their team, I felt very different. I love the fit of McCarthy in that offense.
Yes.
Love it. And I think it's a perfect spot to really make up for those weaknesses, right? Because I think they will kind of coach the gunslinger out of him. Him being, this hard worker, I do think that's very possible.
And that's a big thing. Again, this is a very coachable player. Always has been a very coachable player. So you had a comp to him for like Andy Dalton in a sense. My comp to him was a literal ball of clay, not a player, an actual piece of clay to mold. That's kind of what I thought of him as, because he is that hard of a worker. He's a smart player, and he has the intangibles that you want to mold. He's mobile in the sense he can extend plays. He's got an arm. He's got arm talent.
And it goes back to what we said, right? This locker room is built not off of necessarily players, but people, right? That's what they look for first. And I definitely agree in the sense of this is a ball of clay to be molded. Yeah, I definitely agree.
So, let's ask real quick. Who do you think starts the season?
They said Sam Darnold starts. I'm expecting
it should be Sam Darnold, but J.J. McCarthy has been absolutely tearing it up, apparently.
I am excited to look at the schedule, because I do think it is something that we have to watch out for. Because you look at how it plays out, there's a reason to think they save McCarthy until like week 11, 12.
So here's some. I just want to, before we get to the schedule, I'm not going to spoil much. A big part of why he's a bit higher on the team and I'm a bit lower is kind of looking at this. The schedule is hard.
I try not to hold the schedule against, because listen, we had teams.
Right, you try not to, absolutely.
We had teams that we have winning 10 games, right? Winning 11 games at like 19. Cleveland, I think we agreed like 10 games, right?
And then we went 8 and 9, but you win double digits.
Yeah. And then we proceeded to rank the next 3 teams ahead of them when all of them are 9-win, right?
Right. Totally. Totally.
And again, I look at it. The Vikings could beat some tough football team. Like, that's what they do,
They
man.
could.
That's what they
They
do.
could if this quarterback situation works out. And I think that's a very...
So, this kind of goes back to something that I want to hit on. If you can make Dobbs work, and then you made Jaron Hall look acceptable, and Kirk Cousins was having what seemed to be an MVP year before he got hurt, why do you think they can't make either of these two work? Let alone the better of the two, either of them work.
It's not that I don't think. I think goes back to that's a lot of projecting in my eyes. We're talking about Sam
when
Darnold.
they have proven the ability to do it, is it really projection?
I mean, I'd feel comfortable saying I'd take Dobbs over Darnold. Darnold has been like I'm okay taking Dobbs over Darnold. If I were to pick one right now,
I think you think that because of Dobbs' time with the Vikings and how good it.
Well, I thought he was good with I thought he was fine with Arizona.
He was
great.
He was,
and
that was also Petsing. But yes. I am expecting, even if the quarterbacks aren't necessarily great players, great quarterback play here.
Okay.
I am.
So let's talk about why that's the case and talk about these players surrounding them.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Jefferson, there's not a lot that needs to be said here. This is debatably the best receiver in football.
I feel very comfortable saying he is the best. I do.
Yes, I do too. I didn't say it because I didn't know where you stood. I feel very comfortable saying Justin Jefferson's the best.
The catch radius, I mean, he catches everything. He catches everything, man.
For me, it is his ability to catch the football.
Yes.
It is.
But then he's also an amazing separator.
Yes.
Not because he's the fastest guy on earth, although his speed is nothing to scoff at. Remarkable route runner.
And it comes to, like, he has such a great feel as a football player.
Yes.
To knowing what he should do in certain situations. Like, he is just...
Mm-hmm.
You throw it up to Jefferson. There's a reason Kirk Cousins threw it up on 4th and 30 or whatever it was. And Jefferson one-handed it to the ground.
That game was crazy, by the way. That game needs to be kept in a time capsule.
It is one of the better games I've seen. I won't lie.
Yes. It's a crazy, crazy game. But then I find it so interesting with Jefferson because he's like so good at all this other stuff. And I feel like he's like quietly one of the best after catch players in the NFL. I think Absolutely. He is so good at everything else that he doesn't really get used after the catch. And also, he's getting bracketed all the time, so after catch opportunities are really difficult to find. But this is someone you could scheme open with an after catch opportunity, and he'll take it to the house. Like he can. He's a remarkable after catch player, and he doesn't get credit for it because he's an insane route runner, insane at the catch point, just an insane wide receiver, game breaker. That's what he is.
Yes, and right next to him is, I think, a very ideal wide receiver too in Jordan Addison. We actually had a discussion about some draft wide receivers before we hopped onto this video, and we were both like Jordan Addison. Was ranked 5 for both of us in that draft. Mm-hmm. And he kind of went to the perfect spot as this ideal wide receiver too.
They use motion. Motion really helps the kryptonite or press coverage is my kryptonite players, right?
Yes.
He's one of those guys.
I like kryptonite. We can use that next.
He's a kryptonite player. There we go. These kryptonite guys need motion. And they need unique offensive coordinators that know how to use them properly. We saw it with Tank Dell. We saw it with Tyreek Hill. We still see it with Tyreek Hill. We saw it with Rashee Rice. I mean, we see it all the time, right? We're probably going to see it with Xavier Worthy this year. Jordan Addison, being in a Kevin O'Connell offense that knows how to use him properly and get him away from press coverage, makes him really dynamic because when he's not getting pressed, he is a great route runner. Who could also, make some plays after the catch. Just a great... Absolutely. I think it's the route running more than anything. Like, he's a spectacular route runner. It's just, don't let him get jammed down the line of scrimmage because then he will not get a chance to show that off at all.
Right. So, now I have my question of, this is where it gets a little more blurry. Who's playing this wide receiver 3 role?
So, I like Powell.
So, I like Powell. I've heard Jalen Naylor has been really good at Vikings camp. Mm-hmm. But I like both of them a good amount. I do like Powell more
I mean, they have
personally.
Sherfield too, who is a Shanahan
Dolphins
guy.
legend Trent
Well,
Sherfield.
he's worked
Yep,
with so
Dolphins
many
legend Trent
Shanahanian
Sherfield.
schemes, and it's because he is a smart guy. He knows where to settle. He knows, oh,
Hmm.
option route, this is what I'm reading. Like, he's very good with that stuff, and that's why he stays in these Shanahanian teams. Because let's be honest, when he's not on a, choice route, not an overly exciting name, but when he's executing a choice route, very consistently making the right choice, right? Someone I really like for those reasons. Uh, and then Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson being as good as they are makes me not really too worried. Uh, but of course, you want to have a great third option, capable third option, and let's be honest here, they've done a great job developing receivers there. Great. So I feel like whoever they
Yes,
go with is going to be
absolutely.
very solid. Very solid.
I have to agree, especially when Justin Jefferson is getting that much attention and makes
Hmm.
every other receiver's job that much easier.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
let's move on now to the tight ends. And while he is currently on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform list, TJ Hawkinson's up there as one of the better tight ends in the league, man. He is awesome, and he's a great fit, again, in this Shanahan West Coast style of scheme where you need a good blocking tight end who also happens to be a great receiver and is good after the catch.
Yeah. No, I completely understand what you're saying there. He is someone who, like you said, mauler in the run game, but then you could also trust him on these, check and release. He's kind of like a do it all tight end. Because, you can
Mm-hmm.
line him up in the slot. I like him most from the traditional tight end, wide tight end spot. But he, like I
Me as
said,
well.
do it all. Do it all, right? Consistent possession guy, someone who could do it after the catch, win at the catch point, block well. He does it all, right? Nothing at the highest level on earth, but I would say he's great at everything.
I happen to agree with you. And you want to talk about more of a big slot tight end. I think Josh Oliver fits more of that role. Just
Mm-hmm.
a really athletic, big receiver at this point. He's a not a liability as a blocker. He was fine, I guess, but this is much more a tight end you want running routes and catching passes.
This is a team that when they do go too tight, it might as well be 11 personnel because, especially the McVay guys, they don't do too tight. They don't do it. They do 11 personnel mainly, maybe, maybe some 21. They run their 21 stuff, and part of the reason they can run their 21 is because CJ Ham at fullback, very very reliable guy out of the backfield, right? I mean, he could also go out there as a blocker and do some damage, but more than I think, he is a utility guy. He is someone that you hand the ball off to, pass the ball to, and he's also probably a better pass blocker than run blocker.
Yes, I would happen to agree with you there. So behind him, you have Johnny Munt, who is much more traditional inline blocking tight end. And just because it's funny to
Oh
mention,
yeah,
N'Keal Harry is a tight end on this team. Um, I doubt he does a whole lot easier though.
I doubt he
Former
makes the
Patriots first round
roster.
pick.
I doubt he makes the
Yeah,
roster, but yeah, it's a name worth mentioning. Also, Robert Tunyon is here.
he is here.
Another
He
NFC
is here.
South guy who plays kind of that TJ Hawkinson traditional tight end, do it all guy. Is he still that? I don't know. It's been a while for him. But he is someone worth mentioning, 100%.
Right. So now let's move on to these running backs, and they just acquired Aaron Jones from Green Bay, and this is a fantastic fit, man. It really is.
Yeah. So you say it's a fantastic fit. I'm a little bit curious as to why you say that because, listen, good zone runner. But I mean, yeah, he'll catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit. I wouldn't say he's like this overwhelmingly. I wouldn't say McCarthy's someone that targets the running back an absurd amount.
Well, I would also agree with you, but as we said, this is somebody the coach is in his ear like, we want you to do this more. And they're
Okay,
going to want the ball in
yeah,
Aaron Jones's hands a
that's
lot.
fair. That's fair. But they never use
And
these
Sam Darnold does
Yeah.
target the running
Yes,
back a
you're right
lot.
there. You're right there. But Alexander Madison wasn't exactly used too much out of the backfield. I don't think they intend to use. I mean, maybe they saw some stuff that Shanahan did with McCaffrey and they want to replicate that.
Well, it's not only that; they also just watched what Aaron Jones did in Green Bay.
Yeah.
And he caught a lot of passes out of the backfield. I
Mhm.
think it'd be malpractice on Kevin O'Connell's part to not target him out
Oh,
of the
and
backfield.
they will, and they
You know what I
will.
mean?
I
So that's what.
think I feel like he's gonna get a little bit underutilized as a pass catcher. However, I do think he's gonna make up for that because he is a good inside zone runner, and they're gonna run
And
inside zone.
and that's where it comes for me with the great fit. He's a great inside
Hmm.
zone runner, and
Yeah.
that is what the Vikings love to run. And it's
Hmm.
a much better inside zone runner than Alexander Madison was. I'll tell you
Yes,
that.
absolutely, absolutely. Alexander Madison was more of a hit the hole gap runner. Aaron Jones is not that. He is a
No,
not scat guy, but he's more of a elusive. Let me see the
and yeah,
blocks develop type of guy.
and he's elusive, but he still has really great contact balance.
Yes.
He's able to stay up. I think he's a damn good running back, and I
Hmm.
think he's going to have a pretty big season for Minnesota. And behind him, Ty Chandler, more a speedy guy.
Hmm.
Gonna again zone guy, find the hole, hit it, take off and run. He's not
He
a
ended that
power back.
season really well last year. He did.
Yes,
He
he
had a
did.
good end to the season. He's someone that has a second option. I like. And then Cam Akers is another name who is that next guy. Sure, why not?
Is he on this team still?
So I'm looking at
Is he on this team now?
when I took my notes. He was. I don't think he got
I
cut.
don't see him in this depth chart. Let me
Well,
look.
you probably have
Let
the
me look.
most
I don't see him on
recent
this
one.
depth chart. Yeah, Cam Akers
It says he's
is.
on the Texans.
He's on the Houston Texans.
He was on the
He's on the
Vikings.
Houston Texans.
When
He was on the
I have
Vikings.
my notes right here. So this changed within the past couple of days.
It must have, I guess.
Well,
I
yeah.
don't ever. I
This
thought
was
Cam
also
Akers joined. I
before.
thought Cam Akers joined the Vikings last year, and then he got cut before this
Uh,
offseason.
well, this was before T.J. Hawkinson got hurt. But again, I'm looking. This has J.J. McCarthy on the roster, so this is correct at some point this offseason.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious. When did I take this? Can I find that? Hold on. Let's see. Uh, saving the photos and then seeing if. Now I'm trying to get a date. Uh, it was July 19th. I took this. So as of July 19th, he was on the roster. All right, but I am going to cut that. Okay.
So somebody else I want to mention in this running back room because he's here. I was a big Dwayne McBride guy when he was coming out of the draft, and he got picked in the 7th round. I was a little surprised, and he wasn't used at all last year in a relatively weak running back room. He's still on the roster. I still think he'd be a fine player. I just wanted to mention that he's there.
hmm And then Nwangwu is a special teamer, but he's
Yes.
someone that could go out there and do some damage there.
Now let's move on to this offensive line because it's a damn good offensive line, especially when it comes to the tackles. Christian Darrisaw just inked a new contract, very deserved. He's one of the best left tackles in football, man. He is awesome.
It's just about health. As long as he's healthy, he's a stud. He's a stud, very reliable guy, and he paves people down in the run game. I mean, there's not really much more to say. He's a very, very consistent pass blocker more than anything. I think he's a really good run blocker, but the pass blocking is really how he gets his damage done. Never lets up pressure. Never.
And I think the Vikings got this guy by trading back. They traded back to get Christian Darrisaw, and they still got a player of this caliber, which is awesome. And then opposite of him, Brian O'Neill, who I think is more one of the underrated tackles in the league. He's great right tackle to have on your team, man.
Yeah, I think he kind of gets overshadowed by Darrisaw because Darrisaw is flashy while also being remarkably consistent. O'Neal is kind of just a consistent guy, but that's not a bad thing. On the O-line, if you're consistent, that's a great, great thing. Your name
He's
isn't
gonna have a long
going to
career.
be on, the back of fans' jerseys, but you're going to make a boatload of money, and you're going to be a key reason for your team's success.
And he has been. And now we get to the interior, which is a little more lackluster. They played better than maybe I expected last year, but I still have my concerns at center and at guard.
Mhm.
And we'll start with Garrett Bradbury, who Garrett Bradbury is interesting because he's an athletic center, and he's shown flashes of being pretty damn good, especially in the run game. But I think he still struggles pretty immensely as a pass blocker. And that's always hard to do when you're – and it's a little less worrisome as a pass blocker when you're the center because you typically have help from a guard, either the left or right guard. However, he's still not very good at it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree, but the athleticism is really nice when you're running some outside zone, which is something they love to run.
Absolutely.
Right?
He's a great fit.
He's a very good fit for their run scheme, but I do agree, as a pass blocker, he can be exposed. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then you look at Ed Ingram, who there have been plenty of jokes about Ed Ingram. He played better than he had in years past, but again, still, well, maybe not a liability at this point. Not a great interior offensive lineman to have on your team, and you can say the same thing about Blake Rendell.
Yeah, I mean he's definitely trending up.
He's trending upwards, absolutely.
For Ed Ingram, Dalton Risner was their starting left guard earlier in the offseason. It's between him and Blake. I like Risner for sure. I wouldn't say he's like a stud. He's probably the most reliable name on this interior offensive line, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, but again, the interior offensive line is clearly like the Achilles heel of this offense, I would say. But again, they get rid of the ball so quickly. I feel pretty good. Yeah, so overall, this offense, I mean, it's a unit I like. It is a unit I really like, and it's banded together by a really well put together scheme. Really well put together scheme. And, I mean, when this season they quietly finish, like, in the top 10s in points scored, don't be too surprised. Right?
Absolutely. So, offensive player of the year, we can both agree, it has to be Justin Jefferson. Very easily, right? Yeah. Now, for offensive rookie of the year, there is really only one answer here, and he'll play at some point this season. JJ McCarthy.
You know, if there was another guy who could play, I would probably say them because I think there is a chance that McCarthy, I don't feel very certain that McCarthy is going to be a starter for more than like 6 weeks. It's nothing really against McCarthy. It's just when we get to this
absolutely.
schedule.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I think this is a coaching staff that's very responsible and will know when to put their quarterback in.
Yeah. But there is no other guy that I feel any more confident about starting. So,
right?
McCarthy.
Like no one, yeah.
And again, it's not a knock on McCarthy. I just think Darnold is going to hold the fort down just fine. And because of that, I don't think they're going to rush at all.
They won't rush to put McCarthy in, and they don't need to. So,
yeah.
So, do you have your 12th man and or your X Factor on here?
Both of mine are on defense.
Wow. My 12th man is CJ Ham because I love CJ Ham, and I think when they do bring him onto the field, he makes plays, and I that's my pick. It's kind of an unflashy one as the fullback.
Yeah, well, he is one of the flashier fullbacks I think the league has seen in a very long time.
Yes.
Right, he is someone catches a pass, goes the extra mile. I completely understand what you're saying. Now, this defensive scheme, I've been waiting to get into this. Into this.
Yep.
Right, this is I think our feelings about this might be the differentiating factor, right? Because I don't think that you dislike Flores, but I think we're going to look at this. Yeah, I think we're going to look at this defensive roster, and you're going to feel like, oh, that's going to hurt him. That's going to hurt him. That's going to hurt him. And I feel like the amount of those weaknesses where I look at it and I say the scheme makes up for it might be different. And that is going to be what really
that'll be where we differentiate, I think, for sure. Because there's a certain position group I look at on this team, and it happens to be very important.
And that's fair. And we'll get to that. But
so we'll get there.
It
will
totally restrict their ceiling. We'll get to it when we get to that position group. But anyone that really knows, right? If you're familiar with this roster, But I do want to mention they did have the same problem last year. The defense was still pretty damn good.
Still pretty damn good, absolutely. And that comes from Brian Flores, who, to me, it's between him and Mike McDonald when it comes to the brightest defensive minds in the game. I have a lot of respect for him not only as a head coach, as a Dolphins fan. I had him as my head coach for multiple seasons, but as a defensive mind, I mean, the things he did with this Dolphins defense were spectacular, man. That was some of the most fun I've had as a fan until very recently.
Yeah.
And when you talk about confusing an opposing quarterback, Brian Flores knows how to do that, and he knows how to take calculated risks that aren't even risk at this point because they work out more often than not.
It's not even just confusion. Mentally, I think quarterbacks before going against Brian Flores defense should go to therapy because they are going to put so much pressure on you, both in terms of like processing what's going on and like literal pressure rushing you. Because this is the only team that you will see go on. They don't rush for it is not in their like they rush for, but
No,
that is considered like the base defense. But them, it's not their style. They're either rushing 3 and showing a heavy blitz, or they're showing a heavy blitz
or
and doing a heavy blitz. Right? That is their game. They will always show blitz. It's just a question of...
And it's what people reference as an amoeba defense. That's kind of what Brian Flores has kind of coined the term as, of this mug up the line of scrimmage with as many players that are not corners covering the receivers as possible and figure it out, quarterback. And then, it's been wildly successful.
You see cover 3 a lot, but how Brian Flores runs cover 3 is very different, because his cover 3 is like defensive lineman dropping back into the hook curl, and then you have this guy who looked like he was in man-to-man coverage, now he's covering the other hook curl for some reason, and it's just like, oh, look, Danielle Hunter has the middle third, guys. Like, it is wild how they really mix this up. And you would think, Danielle Hunter, how are you not getting exposed here? Great question. I don't know, man. I do not know. You'll see it occasionally.
He did that with Christian Wilkins in Miami. He'd be like, how are you not getting exposed in pass coverage, Christian Wilkins? And it's like, I don't know, actually.
Yeah, it's really, really confusing how it's a lot of sim pressure. That's what we call it when you show blitz and then you drop your guys back. And, of course,
something I really want to mention, too. In Miami, he ran man coverage at the highest, by like a lot, the highest amount of man coverage in the league.
Yeah.
He actually, because of a position group, which we will get to shortly, last year, did a lot of zone blitzes and stuff like that. So, again, as a coach, he's able to adapt to his players and the personnel he has as well.
And a lot of the time when he runs that zone look, he's still showing man pre-snap.
Oh, absolutely.
And, following motion with man rules. And then the second the ball is snapped, it's a complete shift, right? And then sometimes they will just run cover 0 in man-to-man. By the way, I find it really funny. They run a lot of one high, but it's not like one high coverages. It's just like base formations. Because when they run man, it's cover 0. They don't do high safeties.
Yeah, it's cover 0.
They do high safeties when it's cover 3 or some form of zone. But when it's man, no. If you're in man coverage, you are on an island every time.
And I think that's something that I have seen Brian Flores evolve into, is knowing when to not do the zero blitzes as much and go into that zone look if you don't have the corners, because that was an issue in Miami. Yeah. That was an issue of he stayed stubborn, and we had Cater Kuo covering Jamar Chase on a slant, and he'd take it for 80 yards in a primetime game. And it's like, stop doing that. Stop being stubborn with the man coverage. Because that's the thing with the Brian Flores game. It's either it's a turnover, a sack or whatever, or it's a big play, or it's a really big play because it's man coverage against a really good receiver, right? So that's I love Flores. Yeah. This is not a...
I want to get into a couple more things, because this is a defense where there's a lot. There's a lot schematically, because that's what it is, right? This is not a Jimmy and Joe's defense, although it is becoming one. We're going to get to a group where I feel very, very confident about it.
Yes.
Although there are groups where it is really bad. But in order to make up for those really bad groups, you have to have that great scheme. And I think, again, when you're showing blitzes like this, the sim pressures is really what I want to hit on, because they show blitz a lot and have their guys drop back into that cover 3 look that you mentioned. They aren't just rushing 4, they're rushing 3, right? So you have 8 guys in coverage, and you're making the quarterback think he has to get it out hot. That very, very rarely ends well for the quarterback. Very rarely. And it shows.
One of my favorite games of the season was this Vikings, well, at least to watch the defense, was the Vikings against Brock Purdy and that 49ers offense. Brian Flores put Brock Purdy in hell.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy was in purgatory for 60 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So just recommend watching that game if you're not familiar with what Brian Flores does. Just incredible work.
Absolutely. And the last thing that I want to hit on schematically, this is the first team that we've covered that runs this new kind of wave of defense that teams are starting to like tamper with but not really run as their base. This is the first team I would say runs it as their base. 2-4-5. That is their base defense, right? Which is really, really dynamic. In theory, can be more dynamic as they get more hybrid guys as their edge rushers. We're going to go into these new edge rushers and how I think they kind of fit that hybrid mold a little bit better and can lead to them doing some creative stuff. I want to wait till we get to the edge rushers to get into that. But 2-4-5, you have 2 interior defensive linemen, 2 kind of edge rushers who can drop back. Last year, they were really just edge rushers, so they didn't experiment too much. And then 2 linebackers playing the traditional linebacker spot. That is what I feel is their main defensive package.
Yes. So let's just get into the bright spot on this team, and I think we can both agree that's this front 7.
Yes.
This front 7 has some guys now compared to last year, which had none other than Daniil Hunter, really, and Ivan Pace, which we'll get to, but those were the only 2, really.
Yeah. So we'll start on the defensive line, right? On the interior, because I feel like that's probably where it's a little bit weaker. I want to get a little bit more optimistic.
It's definitely...
but it's not a bad
unit. I like Harrison Phillips to play nose tackle. I do think he's a good nose tackle. But any unit that has Jerry Tillery as your starting defensive tackle...
You think he's going to start?
It's where he's listed right now.
Well, right now, because it has them listed at... We're using the All-Lads ranking. It has them listed as a 3-4. You're only starting 2 guys.
True. Oh, yeah.
I feel like Harrison Phillips, Jonathan Bullard, maybe you move Levy Rodriguez in a little bit and Jonah Williams. That's not too bad. Again, I like Harrison Phillips. Like, he is the guy. Yeah. But then you get a rotation on that other spot, maybe put Tillery in a little bit. I feel pretty good. I feel like fine.
No, I think it's fine. You feel better than you did last year. You feel better than you did last year.
Yes, absolutely. Sure. And again, they're going to get help. It's going to be loaded boxes a lot.
And as much as interior defensive linemen are always important, they're not as important in Brian Flores' scheme. They're not. It's not as big of a deal as the edge rushers and a lot of these linebackers are.
They are in such a good position to kind of run wild a little bit because Ivan Pace was a phenomenal cleanup guy. Blake Cashman, who they brought in, is a really good inside linebacker. I know you probably wanted to go edges next, but I want to move to that second level because I think it does really cover up for kind of the weaknesses of that interior defensive line. Ivan Pace and Blake Cashman hit, when they're blitzing, they go. They go, and they collide with people, and they do damage when they're stepping down towards the line of scrimmage, stepping downhill. Very, very good cleanup guys that could also really play like a role when they choose to blitz.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. Blake Cashman was fantastic with Houston last year. Really finally started to come out. He's one of those guys drafted as an athletic linebacker and just took a couple years and took him getting with a really good linebacker developer in D'Amico Ryans to finally mold into himself, and he was fantastic last year. And Ivan Pace going into year 2 is only going to get better, and he was
he was their field general as an undrafted rookie. He was their field general, right? Yep. He's a really smart player who again.
Now, should he have gone undrafted? Probably not.
No, he shouldn't.
I liked Ivan Pace a lot more than undrafted.
He plays with a lot of ferocity. I think that's the thing that really shines about his game. And then Brian Asamoah.
He's a phenomenal blitzer, man. I don't know if we mentioned it, but as a blitzer, he is up there.
Yep. And then Brian Asamoah is a nice coverage guy who really can't do anything else.
No. Same thing with Kemo Gruger-Hill. He did the same thing in Miami. He played in Miami with Flores as well. So.
Yeah. And then I guess now we'll move to the edge rushers. This is the highlight of the defense.
This is the fun part.
Except maybe the off-ball line. Like, if we're talking about just the starters, the off-ball linebackers might be the highlight. But in terms of the overall unit...
No, I think the edge is the highlight here. I think even if you looked away from if you just looked at the starters, because I love Jonathan Grenard, and if you've ever, as a Dolphins fan, you know how good
Van
Andrew
Ginkel's a stud.
Ginkel is in a
Van
Brian Flores.
Yeah.
Not only is he good outside of a Brian Flores scheme, he's fantastic inside of a Brian Flores scheme. There's a reason Flores was probably pounding the table when he heard Andrew Van Ginkel was available.
Yeah.
Because he was phenomenal under him and has only gotten better away from him. So now they're joining back up. Oh my gosh.
Van Ginkel is he's a really underrated name here.
Such an underrated name.
Yeah.
Brett Coleman just made a video about
I
him.
saw he was on the thumbnail. I haven't watched the video yet.
He's on the thumbnail, and I haven't watched the video either. I'm just happy he did, because Andrew Van Ginkel does not get talked about enough. That was we had 3 starting edge rushers go down, so they were all impactful. But Van Ginkel going down was a huge hit against this Dolphins defense, because he is a phenomenal edge player. Yep. He's not a defensive end. He's an outside linebacker that plays the edge.
Exactly.
That is
so
what
he could drop back, right?
Yes.
And
he's good in coverage. He's actually quite good in coverage.
Yeah. Then Grenard, I would say he's more of like a pure edge.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
Again,
much more of a pure edge.
Can do it if you ask him to in terms of dropping back. Can do it. You know, he could do it better than Danielle Hunter.
Yes.
Okay. He could do it better than Danielle Hunter. But he was also great last year in Houston. He was a complimentary guy. Oh, what's he going to do if he gets double teamed? You don't double team people when you play Flores. It is cannot be done. It is impossible.
You double team somebody, there's an open gap where Ivan Pace is going to eat your quarterback.
And you're never going to leave a gap open even when they're rushing 3, because they're going to make you think they're sending the house. Okay, it's a really scary defense. Really scary.
It's terrifying
because of how it
and
works.
Now we can touch on
by the
player,
way. Yeah.
We
love this edge rushing room. We haven't even got to their first round pick. They spent a first round pick on an edge, and we love their starting two.
I wasn't a huge Dallas Turner guy. I liked him enough. He was one of my top 3 guys, but I was kind of like, he's really athletic, but I'm not there yet on him. I don't care that I wasn't there yet on him. Brian Flores utilizing his athleticism in this blitz heavy scheme, he'll line up at middle linebacker. Dude.
I
they'll
think
put him wherever they want him.
If hypothetically they can't get him going at edge, put him at middle linebacker, I think he becomes a stud. I think he becomes a stud as a middle linebacker, because the main thing that shows about him, the motor, right? That's like the energy, the speed, the athleticism. It's all there. He might not be a refined pass rusher. Maybe he never will be. You could find a role for someone like him on your defense. You absolutely
on Brian
can.
Flores' defense specifically.
On any defense,
he's just,
but especially
because Brian Flores is going to look at him and say, I don't care if you're not a refined pass rusher. Here's a gap. I want you to run at it as hard as you can and as fast as you can. See ball, get ball, Dallas Turner, and it's going to work, because they'll scheme him. He'll scheme him open in the blitz, like how McVay and Shanahan scheme open receivers in their team, and McDaniel. Brian Flores schemes open blitzing players. Yep. That's what he does.
Exactly, and it's great. And I like how you mentioned the scheme again and how he schemes guys open, because we hit on. I also like Jihad Ward a little bit as a depth piece, but Dallas Turner, we agree. Very, very good coverage player. I think I would say he's a very good coverage guy. Then Grenard, we think he play coverage a little bit. Van Ginkel is a good coverage player. That's 3 edges that could play coverage. 2-4 defense. I'm going to get funky here. I'm going to get deep into the X's and O's in terms of something I expect them to do. A way to rush 4, but guarantee a free rusher against scat protection, which is very common when you have a running back going out on a route. You're running scat protection pretty much all the time, and that means you're going man-to-man on one side. You have your left and right tackle, or left guard and left tackle going man-to-man, or right guard and right tackle going man-to-man, and then the center and the other side of the offensive line are responsible to the zone to their left, right?
Yep.
If you, in this 2-4 look, drop both of the edge rushers into coverage and then blitz both linebackers, one of them is guaranteed to go free. One of them is guaranteed against scat protection, which is one of the most, if not the most, common pass blocking schemes in the NFL. A guaranteed free rusher when you're rushing 4. That's insane. And then you really start to show that on film. Then you're going to start having teams focus on stopping that. They're going to implement ways to stop that in their scat protection. And then you get Dallas Turner or Andrew Van Ginkel or Jonathan Grenard as a free rusher against scat protection when you're rushing just 4. It is insane the mind games they are now able to play because they have these hybrid edge rushers now. I feel like people underrate how scary Brian Flores is now that he has the ability to run zone coverage, something that didn't really show in Miami, while also being someone that is willing to get creative with his front and blitzing, right? Now that he has these hybrid players, it could be wraps. It could be complete wraps from a schematic perspective.
Right. And I happen to agree. This team does have an Achilles heel. And that's going to be this next group we get to. These cornerbacks stink. Like, these are bad cornerbacks, dude. These are okay. So a little backstory here. It wasn't all. I was even higher on this defense than I am right now. I still think this defense is going to be good regardless because it's Brian Flores. But I was higher because I felt good about Mekhi Blackmon, who was projected starter going into this season, and I liked Kyrie Jackson in the long term, and I expect him to get some play time. Now, unfortunately, rip Kyrie Jackson, gone far too soon. Very tragic event. And Mekhi Blackmon just tore his ACL. He's out for the season. Who is playing cornerback on this team other than Byron Murphy, who's fine, but he plays. I think he's more of a slot nickel corner than he is an outside guy. But he's going to have to play outside.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I don't like this corner room, right? Shaq Griffin, remember that name?
Shaq,
right?
We're talking about Shaq Griffin, man. Yeah. We're talking about Shaq Griffin.
Remember that name, right? Josh Metellus.
So Josh Metellus is good, but he's not even really a corner. They kind of more use him as a safety and linebacker.
Well, they're going to use him as a nickel. They're going to use him
they
as
will,
a nickel.
They will, but they
as
move
a
him around
coverage
everywhere.
guy, right? The problem is they need him as a coverage guy, and coverage is not his biggest strength. Right.
No, he's a tackler, and he's a blitzer. They love to send him on blitzes.
Yeah. I mean,
it's bad. Caleb, and then even state.
Caleb Evans is maybe, but he's not. They have young guys. They have a lot of throw a dart at a wall guys.
And it gets to the point now of do you move Cam Bynum to corner? But he was really good as a safety in was the scheme last year. So you don't want to do that. And Harrison Smith, he's fine, but he's living off name value right now. Yeah. He's not the player he once was. This is a bad secondary. Mm-hmm. And as much as we rave about the Flores scheme because it is that good, it is a scheme that is dependent on its secondary. This is a scheme that is at its best when you have corners that can man up in man coverage when they send these zero blitzes. This is not a team that can do that in my eyes. Mm-hmm. And luckily, Flores, again, isn't stubborn, knows he has to do different things, but that does limit the ceiling of where this defense can go. It does.
Does it limit it?
It's really
sure.
So bad.
It's a really bad secondary. But again, it was bad last year. It might have been worse last year, maybe. And with Mekhi Blackmon out.
Not with the cat. This is worse than it was last year.
I mean, I look at it. Maybe we have.
And I completely agree that I kind of agree that Flores will do a good job covering up the weaknesses of his secondary. Mm-hmm. But that is an issue this Vikings defense faced near the end of the year last year when they couldn't cover it up anymore. They were going against teams with these good receivers, and it was hard, man. And it was just hard with how bad the secondary was.
But maybe we get the Andrew Booth breakout. I know it's been bad.
If he does, that changes things.
Yeah, exactly.
I would love if that was the case because I liked Andrew Booth coming out, but that's a big projection.
Yeah,
I mean,
and you're right.
Fabian Moreau might be the best.
They added him recently.
He's here, and he's here, but he's again. This is bad. It's bad.
Yeah. No, and you're right. But again, last year was bad, and they were good. Still, really good. This year, it's still bad, but now they're even better at what they were good at. I feel like it gets to a point where you're so good at something, it makes up for the other things, right? And I feel like, again, they run that cover 3 occasionally because teams get so confused by it. I think that leads to sacks happening, not even because of guys getting locked up, but just because you're looking in the wrong place, right? I feel pretty good about this defense despite the Achilles heel that you're mentioning, right? And
And it's hard not to feel good about a
yeah.
Brian Flores defense. It
Mhm.
just is. It's hard to do.
It also doesn't have. So we look at the safeties. I think they're fine, right? Harrison Smith is on the decline. Like objectively,
He's on the decline. Cam Bynum's like objectively good. Cam
Yeah,
Bynum was
he's
objectively
good.
the best
He's
player in
good.
the secondary last year.
Hmm. Do we think Lewis ever, or we think they kind of
I
gave
would
up on
hope
that?
so. I liked seeing coming out of college. I liked his
Hmm.
athleticism. I would hope Ryan Flores could coach him up. And if he does, that is another boon because you could potentially even move Bynum to like corner if you needed to because he can play it.
Uh huh.
But that's again, we have to see that first. I've heard nothing about Seed in Vikings camp, and I've been pretty tuned in because I love JJ McCarthy. So
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So now, I think we can move on to the defensive superlatives. No.
yep.
So, I do want to ask you this, right? In terms of the starting edge rushers, do we think it's what it looks like right now with Dallas Turner being the third option? Or
Yes.
I don't blame you for thinking
I
that.
think
I think
I
that's
think
very
I
fair.
think I think he's not only not. I just it's almost you almost don't want to give
He has
Dallas Turner a
two.
role because I
Yeah,
do think Flores is going to put him literally everywhere along the
exactly, and
defensive
I think
as a
that's
line as a
completely
middle
fair.
guy.
Yeah. So, defensive player of the year, who do you have? This one's tough, right? There's a lot of guys.
This one's tough. I'm gonna go with Andrew Van Ginkel. I think Andrew Van Ginkel is gonna have a huge season with Brian Flores. Man, he had a
Huh,
good season last year, and that was as the third edge rusher.
I picked Grenard. I like Van Ginkel.
Okay.
I think Grenard kind of killed it last year too, though. Like these are both guys I really like.
Oh, he
I don't know
did.
who's
He
the
did.
better.
He absolutely did.
Yeah,
He's a.
like he wasn't
I
just a
don't know who's.
complimentary guy.
It's really. I think Grenard is a better edge guy. I think Van Ginkel as a whole fits Flores' scheme better, and like is a guy who's going to end up with interceptions, and is a guy who's going
Yeah,
to end up with
and you're right.
So I think both are good options. I think both are great options.
Yep. Defensive rookie of the year. There's one option. It's Dallas Turner.
There's one option. It's Dallas Turner. Yeah.
Exactly.
And he's going to have a good season. He is. Yeah, I'm very confident in that. At
And
least
then
statistically.
And then my 12th man is the same thing. Dallas Turner.
Okay, totally. That makes a lot of sense.
You
I was
have
going
the
to
same
for me.
one?
It was either going to be CJ. I had CJ Ham. Remember?
Oh, you had
I
CJ Ham.
Ham.
Okay, yeah, that's
So
fair.
I would have picked Dallas Turner on defense though.
Yeah. And then X Factor. What do you have?
It's so funny because you actually mentioned him once. My X Factor is Andrew Booth. I think of
I
Andrew
have the
Booth
same
over-
exact X Factor.
Oh.
Yep, same exact thing. How could you not? Like, we need someone to break out in the secondary at corner.
You need
Outside
because
corner.
if you do, suddenly this is like can be the best defensive football. I don't think it can be with how bad the secondary is right now. I don't.
Yeah.
With how
need
dependent
an
Brian Flores' scheme is
Out.
on it.
Yeah, they need an outside corner. You need someone to break out. Who else will you pick? Really, looking at this depth chart.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Caleb Evans, I guess, right? Like,
Well, I was thinking like, Caleb Evans, and I looked through the rest of the depth chart. I was like, no.
you know.
But Andrew Booth hasn't been too good either in the NFL. But
He's not been
again,
good.
we'll see. Yeah. Special teams now. Returner, there's one option, right? Keenan Nwangwu, 100,000,000% has been one of the best returners in the NFL for a while now.
It's been awesome, man.
But if he goes down, or if they decide to use their 10th man, which is a guy you kind of get to do whatever with, either lead blocker, pitch man, whatever, if they choose to use him as another returner, I guess Ty Chandler would be the pick.
Ty Chandler, I think Brandon Powell can do it.
Yeah, that's true.
Trent Sherfield has he did in Miami when he was there. So they have guys that can do stuff, but it's really Nwangwu or go home for them. Like they want
And
that
then-
ball in his hands every time.
Yeah. And then kicker or punter, they're not great here. They probably are
Not
one of the
great.
weakest teams in this area. Ryan Wright and Will Reichard. Not very exciting names.
Yeah, I'm not
Then
super
we get
excited.
to other special team contributors. I think CJ Ham is bound to contribute on every special team.
Every single time.
Yeah. I think he could be an interesting 10th man, potentially. Either as a lead blocker or a pitch man or whatever they want
Or
to
even
do
a
with
pitch
him.
man. Yeah, he can run with that ball if they need him to.
Yep, exactly. Then I don't know if they're going to put him out here because he's probably going to be their starting nickel. But Josh Metellus, he's been a really good special teamer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why you take him off of that, except, nickel is important, right?
Yep.
Brian Asamoah isn't starting. He's someone that, being the athlete he is, can be a contributor on special teams, on multiple special teams units. And then we got two other guys that were drafted pretty recently, haven't contributed much as starters, Andrew Booth and Lewis Seen.
Yep.
Not playing much defense, so they could see.
Especially in Lewis Seen's case, because he's a really athletic dude, and they're just gonna say, "Hey, go tackle somebody, man, please."
Yeah, and then we mentioned how this guy might not make the roster, but if he does, N'Keal Harry as a gunner.
Yes,
he was a really good gunner with the Pats.
He was a really damn good gunner, and that's how he makes his roster, because he continues to be a good gunner on special teams.
Yeah, and then if Robert Tonyan makes the roster, I think he could spark some excitement, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that
right, so
is my special teams look. Then we get to the schedule.
And as I mentioned before,
the ceiling,
this is a brutal schedule, man.
It is.
It is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. But again, we saw them beat some good teams last year despite so much adversity. To me, what's your floor? Because my floor is probably higher.
My floor is 7-10.
Oh, we have the same floor.
Yeah.
Listen, if you're less confident in the culture and how they're able to succeed despite adversity, I could see you saying there's a world where they win 4 games.
No, I think this is a competitive football team.
Yeah.
I just don't think the ceiling's there, and little spoiler on my end, I don't think they're going to reach their ceiling. So, what's their ceiling?
What's the ceiling for you? I have 11-6.
Ceiling for me was so was mine. So we have the same ceiling and floor.
I think it's just that you were more influenced by that, I guess.
What do you mean?
In terms of ranking.
You'll I guess I was a little bit more influenced by this because I'm looking at it's hard not to kind of put this schedule into consideration. This schedule is one of the hardest.
But even with the schedule, we see a world where they win 11 games.
There is a world. I don't think you'll see when you hear my prediction for this team.
What's your prediction? 7-10?
7-10. I think
really? Okay, wow. Yes. I have 9-8.
Okay, yeah, mine is 7-10.
Wow, so you're. I find it strange how a Van Ginkel supporter of your extent and McCarthy lover.
I want to be wrong. I do. I do. Believe me, there are some. I'm a truther for many of these people on this team, including their defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
It's just let's take a look at the schedule and we'll kind of see what I mean.
Starting with the Giants, which is of course a great example of what you're talking about here.
I do. I would lean the Vikings to win this game. I would.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Daniel Jones against this defensive scheme, he is going to spontaneously combust. Okay, he cannot process this. Yes. Yeah, he cannot process this. Also, Evan Neal starting, chart, yada yada. Van Ginkel legacy game. Yeah.
Van Ginkel legacy game. The start to his defensive player of the year, right?
Yep.
So then you move to week 2 and much harder opponent in the
San Fran
49ers. Yeah, San Fran beats them absolutely.
I think schematically they match. It's funny, right? Flores, being a blitz-heavy coach, gets beat up by these Shanahan guys, but at the same time, the offense is a Shanahanian offense, kind of. So it's really strange. Although they did give Purdy some problems last time.
They did, but I also trust Shanahan enough to be able to look at that game and be like, here's what we're going to do. You know what I mean? Plus, that was also without Trent Williams. That game was without Trent Williams. I think that game was without Debo.
Yep.
That was, So
I also think Houston would beat them.
This is one of those games where you get a good quarterback with a good receiving core, a quarterback who's not going to be – he's going to get confused. Don't worry, he will, but he's not going to be as confused as other guys. This is where I think the defense gets exposed. You know what I mean?
And
this is where Nico Collins is going to head top.
It also doesn't help that C.J. Stroud is just immune to pressure. He's one of those guys that just ignores it. Yes. Jordan Love is kind of similar, But I think when he gets pressured, he thinks he's ignoring it, when in reality it's leading to him making a stupid decision. Sometimes those stupid decisions get taken advantage of. Other times, no. I think I could see this game going either way. It depends on how those Jordan Love just throws it up because there's pressure coming his way. It depends how those land. I could. I'm going the Vikings here. But
That's where I go.
depends.
I go the Packers. I think Jordan Love played against Brian Flores pretty damn well last year, especially in that second game where he torched him, right? And not only that, I think this Packers team got better, and this is a defense that I think is going to be a lot better than it were last year without defensive coordinator who shall not be named. So I'm going with the Packers here.
Yeah. Then week 5, I think we get to a Jets game that, it's early, it's overseas, right? I'm feeling the Vikings here. I am. I feel like early in the season, Aaron Rodgers and that offense. I think it's an offense that requires a lot of choice
connection,
being on the same connection, and we're already seeing that not working out. We saw the clip in training camp of Garrett Wilson.
And this is a toss up for me, but I also am sitting here can Sam Darnold and or JJ McCarthy right now perform against it? If there's any team that can match up against this offense defensively, it's the Jets. How they are with their corners, you know what I mean? This is a tough. This might be a really low scoring game because this should be. So this is a toss up for me. I don't know. Would I bet on Aaron Rodgers over Sam Darnold or McCarthy? Sure, but I don't know how good Aaron Rodgers is going to be either. So it's a real toss up for me here.
Again, I think this game's going to come down to defense, not just getting a turnover, but getting points, right? Again, I feel like this is a offense, when it's so reliant on these choice routes, right? They're not going to be able to be on the same page because of how different it's going to look from the wide receiver's perspective compared to the quarterback's perspective, because what you see pre-snap is very different from post-snap, right? And I think Rodgers being so reliant on that currently, that offense seeming to be so reliant on that, can go very poorly when playing against the Vikings. But at the same time, yeah, you're right. How are the Vikings going to score? It's tough. Maybe that run game can get going a little bit.
Maybe, but then you talk about this interior offensive line, and you've got to go against Quinnen Williams and those linebackers.
But I'm saying outside.
Sure, yeah. But even then, they've got some good edge rushers too, or projected
they
to be
do, but not best against. I feel like if you're gonna expose the Jets defense, it is with the perimeter run game, because while they have good edge rushers, they aren't exactly known for what they do against the run.
Sure.
The only problem is you have two freaks at the inside linebacker spot.
At the inside linebacker spot, exactly. Freaks. Mm-hmm. So it's tough. It's really tough. And then you've got the one corner in the league who might be able to man up against Justin Jefferson and Sauce Gardner. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Then you got a bye week. Then you play against Detroit.
I have the Vikings winning this game, coming off that bye. I think they're going to pick up a game against Detroit.
Mm-hmm. Confusing golf? You think that's why?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think so.
I get that.
At home, coming off a bye, I trust O'Connell and this offense to put together something against this Lions defense. Mm-hmm. I'm okay taking this.
I also think schematically, quick pass heavy team goes ahead and dink and dunk past this blitz heavy team in Detroit. Now, tell me this: JJ McCarthy, is he starting now?
I think there's a world where we see Sam Darnold shit the bed against his former team. They go into the bye week and they say, JJ, get in there. I think there's a world where JJ's starting here.
Because the bye week is when you think they would make that change. But I think this is the earliest they make that change. I do.
Yes, I agree. Mm-hmm. Unless he starts day one, which I don't think he will, this is the earliest the change happens.
I mean, maybe he starts day one because that's the one, easy game, right? Yeah.
And then they go to L.A.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine. I'm pretty comfortable saying the Rams here. I don't think Matthew Stafford is going to be I'm good. I'm not. He's again. It's always hard to play against Brian Flores' defense, but you've got a guy who's seen a lot. He's playing some of the best ball of his career. Sean McVay's doing the offense. I like this. I like the Rams here at home.
I like the Rams too. Listen, McVay knows Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell knows McVay. It's going to be an interesting. I always love these master versus learner type of games. Stafford is another guy who's kind of just immune to that pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Again, choice route heavy. Maybe that gets exposed because it's so different from the wide receiver's perspective versus the quarterbacks. But I don't. It's tough. This is a tough one. But the Rams at home, primetime football. J.J. McCarthy, we think, will be starting here, right? McCarthy's first primetime game. I guess he knows how to play when the lights are bright, but still, this is Stafford, right?
Yeah, this is Stafford. Rams. So,
but
then you go then you have a mini bye off of that, primetime game against the Colts. I kind of want to lean the Vikings here. This could go either way, just because I do really like the receivers on this team. But Anthony Richardson going against this Brian Flores defense, we'll see. Brian Flores has his career did a really good job against Lamar, outside of that week 1 game where he had literally the worst roster ever created. So I'm going to go Vikings here because they are coming off a kind of a mini bye as well, but this could be a toss-up as well. We don't know how good Anthony Richardson is at this point.
Also, something we go into a lot with these teams that play against the Colts, really, or any soft zone heavy teams. How strong is the opposing quarterback's arm, right? Whether it's J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold, they have a strong arm.
Pretty strong.
You could get into those tight windows. I think Gus Bradley will struggle here. Because of that specifically.
So then you go to the Jags. I actually took the Vikings here as well. I've been going on a 3-game win streak to give a little spoiler to the Titans as well. This is a 3-game win streak for me.
Yeah, I don't see why you would say that how would Jacksonville beat them really? And same with Tennessee, right? I don't think Levis is ready to play Flores. I don't think he ever will be, in all honesty. And
I think that's very fair.
And Trevor Lawrence, right? I feel like he kind of has to see guys open a lot more than we kind of think.
And there is a world where this is a game where Trevor Lawrence does a Trevor Lawrence thing, and it's out of his mind football. You know what I mean? But this is also a game where the gunslinger comes out in Lawrence, and he might throw 3 picks.
Yeah. And I also think this is a game where McCarthy could go a little bit wild. Also, what corner do you have guarding Jefferson? Tyson Campbell? Okay.
Tyson Campbell, I guess.
Let's see. I don't trust it. But then again, what corners can go up to Justin Jefferson and play?
We mentioned one, and that's it.
But I think that guy in Chicago could also give him a tough fight.
Yes, I completely agree. And this is where I think the Bears are a horrific matchup against this Vikings team on both offense and defense, man. They've got the corners to man up against all of their receivers. They've got a good defensive line to defend the run, a good linebacker duo, nice safety duo. Kevin Byard's living off name recognition at this point, but we'll get there. And their defense, he doesn't do a whole lot, don't worry. But then you look on offense, sure, it's a rookie quarterback going up against Brian Flores. It's hard. But who on God's green earth is covering these receivers? This is tough for them, man.
Yeah, but also... you said tough, it with the rookie quarterback, right? I think that is a big thing. But this is week 12, right?
This is week 12. This is him adjusting a bit, right?
I'm telling you right now, I expect Chicago to win the Monday night game later on, 100%. I think it's likely a split. If there is a team that wins both, though, it would be Chicago. It would be Chicago. Yes. Absolutely.
So, but then you've got a really fun matchup in Arizona, and so I'd be very interested to see how Kyler Murray plays against this Brian Flores defense. Super interested, right? But this is also who in God's green earth is covering Marvin Harrison Jr. Right? Who is doing that, dude?
Mm-hmm. And you focus too much on him, then Michael Wilson will really pick you apart. Trey McBride.
You can get dorched. You can get dorched, man.
Yep, you can. You absolutely could.
And this is also, I think this is also a team that
how the Cardinals' defense can kind of get exploited by the Vikings' offense. It should be a high-scoring one.
It should be a high-scoring one. And I also want to mention, this is also, I think this Cardinals team can run the ball on this Vikings interior offensive line. I think this is a thing that can happen too. This should be a high-scoring game. We go to Falcons, Minnesota. I actually picked the Vikings here. I think Kirk Cousins going back to Minnesota. I think Brian Flores can confuse him. And another thing, I'm not completely sold on this Falcons defense, which we'll get to. We haven't talked about them yet, so we both agree that they're pretty good. I'm not completely sold on this Falcons defense. I'm going to go with Minnesota here.
Yeah, again, it's a Zach Robinson, who is a McVay disciple, versus another McVay disciple in Kevin O'Connell here. I don't know. To me, it's tough. It's tough. I think the big thing is that I feel pretty good about the Vikings being able to stop the Falcons' passing attack, and I don't think Kirk Cousins is doing too much as just a straight drop back passer against this team. However, if he could get some time, he could pick them apart.
Right. So it is another toss-up. We already talked about the Bears Monday night game. We both agree. I think this is a Bears win.
Yes.
Then you've got – this is such an intriguing matchup because you've got Mike McDonald against Brian Flores, and it's which team is going to mess up on offense the most, right? I picked Seattle here. I'm thinking late in the season. You got a rookie quarterback against this Mike McDonald defense. I'm going with Seattle here.
Who do you trust more against a complex defense, Geno or McCarthy? The answer is Geno. Yeah, the answer is Geno, without a doubt. So I completely understand why you said that. And then Green Bay, we talked about them. If one team were to win both, what do you think?
I would go Green Bay, but I do have them splitting. I had Green Bay taking week 4, and I have the Vikings taking week 17 at home.
And then Detroit again. If one team were to take both, I would probably pick the Vikings, actually.
Really? I would probably take Detroit. Again, I do have them splitting. I like Detroit at home week 18. Mm-hmm. So that's where I was with them.
I could see Detroit kind of just running all over them just because I like Ivan Pace. I like Blake Cashman. I don't know if they could take a Penny Sewell block.
Yeah, get ready to meet Penny Sewell, buddy.
I don't think that's happening. And their edges, while they're good players, I don't think they're like gargantuan edge setters. So
listen, I am a Andrew Van Ginkel guy. He's not gonna be doing nothing to Penny Sewell, man.
Yeah, exactly. So that's all for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you want more of my content, check out the channel link down below. If you want the next part to the series, it will be up on Dean's channel sometime soon. We've been doing these throughout the summer. We're going to really start to turn it up. I'm just about to finish up my job for the summer, so I am going to be kind of spamming these on my channel and his. Definitely check that out. And thank you all. I'll see you all next time.